I've had a long career working as a state inspector for the Department of Mental Health. During that time, I've been to a lot of institutions, and I have seen a lot of horrible things. But nothing even comes close to the evil events that I witnessed at Fairhaven Sanitarium, the place they now call Lux Eterna. I first arrived in 1926 to investigate claims of overcrowding and neglect. However, Fairhaven's reputation was tainted long before that. In 1911, Fairhaven opened its doors for the first time. A notoriously violent criminal by the name of Jack Yates was the hospital's first patient. He was to be the shining example of the hospital's ability to cure the mentally deranged. However, when the superintendent's family was visiting one day, Yates broke free from his restraints, and he killed the man's wife. Since then, no one knows what happened to Yates or the superintendent. Well, that is, until now. Superintendent Wallace Halstead greeted me at the door. He seemed as empty and unkempt as the patients he lorded over. And as I conducted my evaluation, I couldn't help but notice how nervous he got when I passed by a small broom closet. And naturally, I felt it necessary to find out why. When I opened the door, I was hit by the overpowering smell of human excrement. As the light flickered on overhead, I was horrified at what I saw. A withering man lay shackled to the floor in a pile of his own filth. Years of sunless existence had turned his skin, hair, and eyes milky white. He had been chained there for so long that his skin had grown over the shackles. It took me a moment to realize that the husk of a man was Jack Yates. The police arrived and Dr. Halstead was carted off. Doctors moved Yates from the small room for the first time in 15 years. The floor beneath him was permanently stained with the shape of his silhouette. They tried to remove the shackles from under his skin, but the shock of it all was too much for him. He died the next day. I watched as they walled up his tiny prison, trying to pretend that it never happened. I honestly hope he's in a better place, although the staff still claims to hear his agonizing wails coming from inside the walls.
misunderstanding. I'm not sure how she'll take it, but I guess I'll find out. The good news is he wasn't cheating on you. The bad news is your suicide brought them together.
So he really loved me?
Looks like it.
I've made a big mistake.
He still thinks about you. Maybe you can take comfort in knowing that you'll never be forgotten.
I suppose. I just wish I had trusted him more. Maybe it could have been us getting engaged. What's done is done, I guess. Anyways, thanks for everything.
Hey, buddy. You on the clock or something?
I was. I worked here 10 years, until I couldn't take it anymore, and ate a gun. Some secrets are just too heavy to carry.
What exactly did you do?
Some landscaping, mostly grave digging. Pretty much everything you'd expect a groundskeeper to do.
You know that's not what I meant.
Look, you were once a detective, and I was once a humble groundskeeper. Let's just leave it at that.
Fine by me, I was just trying to help.
I've seen them by the side of the road. These unkept, smudged, hopeless people holding cardboard signs. Sometimes they have props. Baby stroller, a pet, gasoline can. Something to lend credence to the thin fiction that they need money for something other than booze. It was a man with a need gas sign with the red gas can on the ground that I saw when I drove into Salem 6 unlucky years ago today. Tried to ignore him, not making eye contact, but I was stuck at a red light and pretending he wasn't there was getting really awkward. So I reached into my pocket and pulled out $2, rolling down my window just a crack. Here you go, buddy. I pushed the money through the opening of the window. That was when, for the first time, I really looked at his face, or what was left of his face. It was a single eyeball just looking back at me, bulging out of a charred skull. I was absolutely frozen in terror until the blackened shape of uncovered finger bones reached out to take the money. And that's when I let it fall to the ground and slammed on the accelerator. I didn't even care that the light was red. In the time since then, I've picked up pieces of the legend. A shell-shocked war veteran, unemployable and alcoholic, became a familiar sight in Salem, begging by the roadside. Citizens stopped giving him money, thinking he would just move on to a bigger city. He responded by creating one of the most traumatic spectacles in town history, setting himself alight in the middle of town during evening rush hour. Ever since that roadside encounter, I've been seeing little wisps of flame out of the corner of my eye, like brief flashes that are gone as soon as I turn my head, sending nauseated chills through my whole body. Is this tormented spirit following me now? Whether he intends it as a blessing or a curse, I just want to be as far as possible from this horrifying specter.
Come on, man. It can't be that hard.
Sacrifice makes a feast for the innocent.
Here we are in the oldest part of the graveyard, which was founded in the 1660s. Was that before?
No one should end up like this.
I wish I could agree, but it's all my fault. I let people believe that I was something I'm not. They called me a war hero, but I was just a coward. For years, I'd retell gruesome war stories of how I crushed the enemy. But they were just lies I told in exchange for free drinks at the bar. I never saw any combat.
Well, you pissed somebody off to get here.
He was going to expose me for the fraud I was. So I tried to kill him.
But he found out before you could do it.
He has some buddies dragged me out here and left me to die. No one ever came looking for me. Too ashamed, I suppose.
I don't be so hard on yourself. I've put away men a lot worse than you.
This is Travis the Ghost Trapper, and we are in Salem, Massachusetts. Now because of the scary history of this town.
You know, I'm pretty sure there are ghosts of witches right around.
I've always been a kleptomaniac. It's not that I was lazy or anything, I was just bored. Stolen goods were always more interesting to me. I could just look at whatever it was and relive the exciting memory of the theft itself. Sometimes I was worried that I'd get caught. Other times I was riding an adrenaline rush. But it wasn't until the last thing I ever stole that I truly felt afraid. I remember it like it was yesterday, despite the years I've been trying to forget it. My friends and I snuck into a graveyard to drink a few beers like we normally did on a boring weeknight. We headed for our usual spot, an old run-down mausoleum. Only this time it was locked. It seemed someone had finally taken an interest in the dead guy it belonged to and didn't appreciate us partying there. So we split up and went looking for a new place. Finally, I found another mausoleum, and one of its walls had begun to crumble away, but I squeezed through. The inside looked the same as all the others, except for one thing. Lying there on top of the central tomb was a dusty frame that contained a wreath made of elaborately braided rope. Knowing that antiques were valuable, I took it. I figured I'd wait a week before selling it, in case anyone reported it stolen. So when I got home, I hid it at the top of my closet and went to sleep. That night, I had horrible nightmares of a dead-faced hag with rotting flesh. No matter how many times I woke up, she always found her way back into my dreams. Over the next few days, the nightmares got worse. I'd wake up only to find clumps of my hair missing and my scalp bleeding. I chalked it up to stress and feelings of guilt about stealing from the graveyard. So the next day I went to a pawn shop to sell the wreath and be done with it. I could feel a shiver run down my spine when the pawnbroker informed me that the wreath wasn't made from a rope at all. It was actually made from the human hair of a deceased loved one, as was customary in the late 1800s. I wanted the nightmares to stop, so I sold it to him. Unfortunately, it didn't work that way. Now, I spend my time trying to track it down, hoping to return it so I can finally get some sleep.